yesterday we talked about getting our idea down and framing it around a problem statement and how to get started. What I wanted to do is share with you some of the research that I've done on the 8 reasons people don't get funded by grants. And what are the biggest mistakes they make in the application process. So it's kind of a review of a few of the things we spoke about yesterday, but there's also a few new ones in there. And then once we do that, we'll take our coffee break. But then after the coffee break, what I'd like to do is dive down deeper into each of those areas that are going to be required for the grant, what you'll need for objectives, methodology, and how to pull those pieces together effectively. And a little bit on how to write the grant so that it makes it easy for the reviewer to understand what you're trying to put into it, and that your ideas are getting across. And I'll share some of the hints that I've used to make sure I achieve those. So, maybe my title's wrong here. I said the 8 top reasons that you will not be awarded the grant, but or maybe the 8 reasons, if you listen well, why you do get the grant, if you take a different approach to that. The first one, of course, that we talked about this, is misreading the directions. Any grant organization has pretty specific directions on how the grant should be filled out, and we need to make sure that those are followed. And as in my slides yesterday, I said, read the guidelines and reread them so you don't make mistakes. And as I admitted yesterday, there's a grant I applied for, I made that mistake because I missed one of the requirements, and it was turned down. So read those directions to make sure you're getting the right guidance and assistance that you need to fill out the grant. Because of course what we want to be able to do is, once we do follow those directions, is that really gives a green light for the reviewer not to reject your grant that something's been missed in the guidelines, and that they can focus on what you're trying to do and how you're going to do it, not that you forgot a section or left something out, or totally misunderstood what they fund or what they don't fund. And another big one is missing the deadline, waiting to the last minute, the last evening to do everything, and missing the deadline. And what we don't want is that to happen. And so, what's critical is understanding when the deadline is and what the effort is to get done at that point. So plan a day early to have everything done and get submitted, because of course something at the last minute is going to happen. Don't plan for it, you're going to miss the deadline. So, now here's our quiz for the morning. What's the deadline on the next cycle for ISIF?
August, this week.
August someday.
9th of August. Well done, boys. At least you know the month. It's the 9th of August.
August 9th?
Yes.
Yes, so a few of you knew that, but there's our target date that we have to start preparing for. And as I said, what we should really do is make that August 1st in our mind, so that we, if our computer dies or we get pulled on another, something else that we didn't plan for, emergency family emergency or something, that we don't miss the deadline. And I'll have to admit, I started writing grants and got pulled into something else and then missed the deadline just because I didn't plan for it very well. So make sure you put that on your calendar, and as I said, put it down as August 1st, and then you'll make sure you don't miss it.
Can I add something to add? That just it would be good if you can read the guidelines before and try to organize your team or your group or the people you need to talk to before that 1st of August. The pre-deadline that was just suggested, So you actually have the last week to write or put together your ideas, but don't leave everything to the last minute, especially if you are trying to do something with someone else. Not to assume that they have the time or the information you actually need to put together the proposal. So we have the proposal open for 2 months. Try to use the whole time to build that proposal. I guess that's the. If you have all the information you need, you may not need all that time, but if you're trying to align community partners and make sure you get the letters of support from the university or the NGOs or whomever, that takes time, so don't leave it to the last minute.
And one of the things we talked about yesterday, of course, is, does your idea and the problem you're trying to solve match the funder's interest? It's let's not try to push a square peg into a round hole. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and maybe you need to look at a different funding agency. Or if there may be a spin to what you're doing, as we talked about yesterday on the language. Well, maybe there's a mobile app, and that would excite the funder, and maybe just looking at what you're doing a little bit differently may excite you as well as the funder. And so don't be afraid to look at different ways your project could fit into what they do fund.
Another comment there would be that most of the aid agencies, if you submit something that is not a match for their objectives or their lines of funding, they will reject it and say it doesn't match our lines of funding, whatever. But they probably will not be interested to even get the discussion any further with you or assist you with something else. In our case, because APNIC is interested in support the Pacific Islands development, we are interested in trying to help you out finding funds to do the work that you want to do in the Pacific. So don't be shy, send me information about what you want to do. If it doesn't fit on ISIF.Asia, we'll try to find a way so you get at least to have the discussion with someone else. Of course, we cannot guarantee that you're going to get the funding from other sources or from us because it's a competitive fund, but still try to help you out to build the network of contacts you need to be able to negotiate proposals. So send me whatever you need and we'll see what we can do.
But of course, if your idea matches, especially if it matches more than one area that they have an interest, the higher probability of success that your grant will have. So take a hard look at those requirements and see what your idea and the problem you're solving, how that fits. And if it can fit in more than one area, make sure that you highlight that, because that just increases your success. And it's good to hear from Sylvia's standpoint, if it's a good idea but doesn't quite fit what their requirements are, and she will actually take the time and recommend maybe somewhere else that you can look. I know other granting agencies I've worked with, it's like you get a no and that's it. They don't actually help or tell you where else you can try to fit that in. So that's good to know that there's help out there if it isn't quite a fit. Another area that is in the top 8 of why grant applications are rejected is the reasoning is confusing. It's not clear, here's your idea and here's the problem that you're trying to solve. It's not clear what that reasoning is and how that is going to solve it. And so it really is, the reviewer starts looking at it, they can't really tie the two ideas or how this idea is actually going to help with the problem that you've identified. And if they can't understand it, it's not going to get past them for their board to look at and approve. So it's critical that you are concise in your language and linking your ideas.
And we read them and we understand them perfectly and everything is not right. It is very good if you just ask someone else that is not working with you that doesn't have the knowledge you have on the beacons or the towers or whatever, and read what you wrote and tell you if they understood what this is all about. Because that's where a lot of the problems come in. And then I read the proposals I received, things that I don't understand, I go back to the applicants and ask them for clarification. And then is where all this confusion of additional information, attachments, long documents start to come in, and it's impossible for the selection committee to go through all those documents. So just be sure that whatever information you are including in the grants proposal is everything they need to know is in there. No additional information will be reviewed after, because basically it's impossible to go through that. If we get 100 applicants doing that, imagine what normally happens is a stack of paper that no one can actually go through. So it's ask someone that is working in your organization or someone like a friend that you know that doesn't really have all the knowledge on your proposal or your ideas to make sure that you are transferring your idea clearly away. And another recommendation, I'm going to send a link to a PowerPoint presentation based on a book called Writing for Change. It's a book published by IDRC quite some time ago. And they have this PowerPoint presentation to promote the book, and I think you can download the book from the bookstore, but I will send you all the details in a few minutes. And this book gives you some ideas about how you have to word things. So the ideas you're trying to express, are linked to development, to improve the lives of the communities you're working with. Sometimes that bit is the bit that is not clear in the applications. And that's what the selection committee needs to know to make sure that you're actually working on internet development for community support. Right?
You know, the difficulty, and I'm in the same position in the grants that I submit. I'm, the subject matter expert, or I'm the innovator that has come up with that idea, and sometimes you're just too close to it. While you're making the link and assumptions, it's not articulated well in what you've written, and the reviewer doesn't see those same links or assumptions, and the grant's rejected because they can't see, how funding a program with this application is going to help women in a rural area. You're making that leap in assumption, it's not written, it's not spelled out, so they don't see it. And so we really need to look at how do we put all those pieces together. And so really, the message here is, make sure the arguments, the problem statement, the link between the idea and who it's helping are clearly articulated and thought through and thought out. Because then once all those pieces fit together, the reviewer is going to read it and they're going to see how all those pieces fit together. And as Sylvia said, it's good to have someone that's not close to it read it, because if they can see those linkages, if they can see how those pieces fit together, then the reviewer is. Because one thing that you never know is what's the experience of the reviewer. If they're not a programmer, they're not going to understand programming concepts. If they're not an expert in women's health, and that's what you're going after, some of those things you have to spell out the basics because they're not experts in those areas. And you have to make sure that you link that idea with your problem statement on how you're going to approach your grant. So fitting all the pieces of the puzzle together so that they understand. Another area of failure is writing it as, you want to do good things in an area, and, that's the whole motivation behind what you're trying to do. Lots of people want to do good things. It's, but just wanting to do good is, that's what everyone else that's submitting a grant wants to do also. So the key here is not just wanting to do good things, but can you think through the process? Can you put your problem statement together, have a plan, and link that to realistic outcomes? So the ability to take your idea, develop that problem statement, put it into a solid plan, and have realistic outcomes. Because one of the things, we talked yesterday a lot about how to take that idea and then formulate around it. But also, writing and submitting a grant, this is more like a process of a blueprint. It's not just about that idea. It's about now taking that idea and building that infrastructure, building that those concepts around it so that people can understand, how you're going to take that idea, how you're going to proceed with it, and what you're expecting to happen as an outcome. And having outcomes that are realistic. And that also ties into this idea that the proposal is only about the idea. A lot of speaking with granting agencies, a lot of people come with good ideas, but that's all it is a good idea. They haven't thought through the outcomes, they haven't thought through the implementation plan, the time frame, proper amount that it's going to take to do that project. And so while there's thousands of great ideas every day, coming from Silicon Valley where ideas flow from people all the time, it's the people that get funded are those that know how to implement a good idea. Those people that are funded that can actually articulate and understand the linkages between the good idea and how to take it with a realistic outcome. So what we want to be able to do, of course, is brainstorm and pull all the pieces together of what we're thinking, how we're going to help a community, how we're going to help a society, and base that proposal on data, not just the idea itself, but data to back it up. Maybe some experience that you've had in that area and seeing how this should be done, and also some best practices on how are you going to implement it and following best practices that are out in the industry. These are the things the granting agency would like to hear, that you've thought through these things, that here's data to support why you think this idea is good, methodology or experience of how you're going to do the implementation, and then best practices that you're going to follow for reporting, for accounting, for human capacity building locally. All of those things thought through and put down on paper. Not just, well, it's a great idea, why don't you fund it? And the last of the 8 is spoke briefly about yesterday, that the proposal focuses why you need the money to do that, and that's not really what granting agencies are looking for. They're not that you need money. They're looking at what are the results of us giving you money will be, and so we have to look at what are the results of what are the outcomes. What is that money going to do for the community, or the group you're focusing on, or the island that you're focusing on? How is that money going to affect the people that you see this is going to change or improve their lifestyle or change? And so it's got to focus on not why your organization or you need the money, but how is that money going to benefit the society, your village, or your community group, or the island that you're focused on. I was preparing for this, I researched and talked to granting agencies, and these were the top 8 that they see as the reason they reject proposals. As they list, it's only about the idea, it's not about the implementation, or it's only about why you need money. So, a good thing is to take a look at these as you're doing your application and making sure that you're not making the same mistake. So, any questions on these?
We prefer to invest the money for a site visit into work that you actually want to do. That's why we do a very big due diligence analysis before any grant is allocated, to make sure that the organization actually exists, to that what they say they are doing. So we investigate, and then we trust you that you're going to do what you said you're going to do. And we trust you with around half of the money you ask for, and then that's the first payment. And then after that, if you don't submit reports and you don't communicate with us and you don't comply with the requirements, you're asked to return the money, and you're not receiving anything else, and you're banned from IDRC and CDA or receiving future funding from us. More or less, that's the idea. But in 5 years, we haven't had not once, an issue with an applicant that hasn't delivered or run out with the money, basically. No one has done that before. The people that have problems implementing a proposal have basically problems of hiring someone that was supposed to do that job and they took some other job and now, sorry, you will have to wait, and it's a 2-3 months delay, something, or someone gets sick, or things, of course, life happens, right? So it's not like you have to and we don't understand. If you can communicate with us, we are human beings and we talk to people and we talk people through things and try to move things along. But basically we try to do all the due diligence and investigation on what you do before.
Well, Sylvia, for those that are new to grants and haven't received them before, can you talk about what the due diligence process is that you go through so they know what to expect?
When the jury, the selection committee makes the final list of proposals that they are interested to support, we contact those organizations and we ask them, we send them 2 forms. One is the bank information form and the other one is the institutional questionnaire. And with those 2, we start, when we receive that data, we start asking information around. And we ask our partners in the region, and we verify all the information you have submitted in your proposal. So if you cite in your proposal that you're going to work with so-and-so organization, you contact that organization to make sure they know you, that they are aware the proposal was submitted. That's why we ask for contact details of different team members. We contact team members and we ask them, are you aware that you're a team member on this and that proposal? And then from that, I do most of that investigation. And then on the institutional questionnaire, we ask questions that our auditors ask regarding corruption and management of funds in the legal framework. So we ask, is your organization managing practices according to the law, and have you, those kinds of things. And then once we have reviewed that information and investigated a little bit more, we ask the applicants to send us the constitution documents of the organizations, the processes and procedures manuals, if they have an anti-corruption policy in place in their organization, their travel policy, what the benefits for the employees are. So we ask a lot of questions. In some cases it could be, for example, if we have, this year we have one grantee that is the university of, one university in Bangladesh, and they send us basically like 500 pages of supporting documentation on processes and procedures and policies and all that sort of stuff. And we have to go through all of them to make sure that they are in line with what the Swedish and the Canadian government are required from us before they sign contracts. But on the other hand, we have organizations like the CHUP project that Bruce is helping out, that just started, that we're kind of waiting for the legal registration to kick in, that were never audited before. So it was like, fine, I mean, you have not been audited before. Good. I mean, what else can you say? We can't say to our recipient, we can't give you a grant because you're new on an innovation fund. That would be kind of ridiculous. So we take the risk of investing in an organization that is just starting, which is good. So don't get scared or go away with this because you don't have the 500 pages of processes and procedures to go through. We have organizations that only apply for legal registration once their proposal was approved, and we have to wait for that legal registration to kick in. So it's all a negotiation process, and we are interested to support that idea. So the more information you give us, the better, but don't get too caught up on that. But for other grant agencies or programs, that might be something that is not.
You may be doing something that no one's done, and there's no research out there, and that's really what it comes back to. You may not have the data, but just your experience. Based on, I was working in this job, and I got this idea because I saw these things, and I think it would work here based on my experience. And so that may be, the factor that they'll weigh because you have experience with that. I could come up with an idea that no one's done, and there's no data on it, but I can also sell myself of working in the IT industry for the last 20 years and the successes I've had, and that will be, what they look at. Okay, yeah, I hadn't heard this idea before, and I haven't seen this approach, but this guy's got a track record, and or I've got best practices I know how to follow to achieve it. They're going to look at that also. So there may not be data on it, but there may be other factors that they'll weigh. Experience, what approach are you going to take with it? Or if you don't have experience, are you consulting with someone that does? Have you pulled someone on the team that, I don't know actually how to approach this, but I found someone that can give us good advice on how to do that. So we pulled in so-and-so to help. So those are all factors that they'll look at. I think we're going to talk and dive a little bit more in depth in the particular sections of filling out the grant, as well as the lessons I've learned along the way and doing it the right way, and how to make it more readable for the reviewer. And once again, keeping in mind the reviewer isn't a subject matter expert in the areas that you are, and how to write clear and concise so that they can understand. So we really call this part the quality of effective grant writing. And it's really taking it from that rough idea, that rough diamond that you have, that you've taken from your mind, and how do we shape that diamond to be something brilliant and really sparkles in the eye of the reviewer, so that company goes to the top of the pile as they're reviewing this. And it's really taking that the quality of that idea and formulating it, and its appeal to the funding source. And so taking that rough idea and really polishing it in how the funder would like to see it. And the critical part of the quality of it is how do you say that concisely? How do you say that clearly? And the hard part is what Sylvia asked us to do yesterday, when she said, can you give us a 1-minute talk on why there should be continued funding in the Pacific Islands? Well, the same thing here. You have to get your thoughts concise, and you have to say it the right way, and you only have so much space to say it. Most of the grant submissions are not books. They're not looking for a 500-page submission at all. They're looking for a few good pages of taking your ideas, how you're going to do methodology, who you're going to help, what are your objectives, and how you're going to do it, and the time frame for it, and a budget. We're not looking for someone to author a book for a $30,000 grant. And it's the same for the large grants. In fact, the largest grant I applied for and worked on that we won was actually only 2 pages. And that the 2-page application, that's all the space they gave us, and we had to be very clear and concise, and that ended up in a $2 million award. So it's not always the length, it's really Can you articulate your ideas, do it very succinctly and very clear and concise? So the process to do that, however, of course, is taking that good idea, making sure it's a fit to the grant, as we've talked about in depth now, assembling that team that we talked about yesterday. If there's areas that you aren't specialized in, bring in somebody that has some experience in that area that can help you. You know, in the project at Shook, you know, I'm not an expert in social sciences and understanding how teachers teach and how now they have a computer lab, how they're going to improve their teaching, or even what kind of curriculum to train the teachers to actually teach in a school that has a computer lab. So I found a partner that I mentioned yesterday, Professor Laura Hosman, who was an expert in that area, who was able to articulate that into our grants on how you do that. You know, I can handle the technical part of here's how you install a computer lab. We have to worry about power, the room, bugs, and geckos crawling in the fan supplies, all of those things. But she was an expert at, well, here's actually how you train a teacher to be a better teacher using ICT. And so it's really key to assemble that team for what you're trying to do, and show that you've thought through it and you see the areas you don't have expertise and you've brought in somebody that does. And, you know, once again, not just that good institutional fit for yourself, but, you know, match the idea with the sponsor. As I said, we talked about that in depth. Once again, read the guidelines. This is the biggest failure for everyone. You know, when they're writing their grants, they miss something in the guidelines and it excludes them. They could have the best submission, met all the criteria as far as matching what the donor wants, but missed those important criteria and they were rejected. Kind of heartbreaking when that happens. So read them again and understand it. And I'm kicking myself as I said this over the last 2 days. You know, the last grant that I just got rejected was because guess what? I didn't read it very well and I missed an important part of the guidelines. So once again, talk to the sponsor. I gave my example of this work. You know, we had a team of 5 people writing this grant for the MacArthur Foundation for $1 million. You know, I was uncomfortable because it's like 6,000 submissions. How am I ever going to win that? But after talking to the grant officer and what we're trying to do and how well it matched with what they wanted, and things he told us that weren't on the website, it really made us feel comfortable with the time and effort for that. And even if we don't get it, we built a relationship that we feel if we don't get it, we're going to have a good conversation of where he thinks we can go and get that funding. So plan it in detail. As we said already, you know, this grant cycle is August 9th. Well, let's put in our minds August 1st that we have to have everything done and start planning the pieces that we need to fill in, when we can get those done, when we're going to talk to Sylvia and talk through our ideas and how we're going to approach it, and make sure we submit the best application we can. And of course, as we discussed yesterday afternoon, making sure the budget not only is in detail but fits the budget guidelines of the grantor. Is, you know, the little things we learned today as far as this grant, it doesn't include, you know, building renovations. If you're putting in a computer lab and the school needs renovation, it probably has to come from somewhere else. And so to keep that in mind. And once again, read the guidelines, but now the other thing is the narrative in mind. How are you going to talk about how you're going to fit those guidelines, but in more in a narrative or dialogue, and so that you show that you understand the guidelines and understand how your project's fitting within those, so that you're showing the reviewer that you fully understand what they're trying to achieve, what their restrictions or limitations are, and how you fit within them. And last, you know, be persistent. As we talked yesterday, a lot of people are not successful their first time out. And, you know, It's a learning process like anything else, and once you submit a grant, most granting organizations will tell you what you've done wrong, where you missed out, and then learn from that, and hopefully the next time you go through the submission process, resubmit, and will get funded. Or a lot of them will tell you, here's a way to look at that project differently next time, and we'll be more than happy to, give you a strong consideration. So there's a lot to learn from not winning a grant on where you fell short. And sometimes with some of these more competitive grants, like the MacArthur Foundation, you may have had the number 2 or 3 submission. You shouldn't feel that as a rejection just because they just didn't have enough. They're only granting 1. So it's not a failure. It's just that next time you'll know what to do for a better job to be the one that comes out on top. So, more questions to ask as you're writing and thinking of planning your grant out. Does the funding agency share your goals? Because if you have goals of what you're trying to achieve for your project, and do they share the same goals and ideas that you have? And it's good to explore those they may not be things that are written on the website. And this is where that contact with your funding officer or manager really is important, so that you can see where those synergies are. Just back to my example with MacArthur, there's some things we found were very synergistic, but they weren't on the website. And we wouldn't have known that if we didn't have that conversation of explaining, here's what we're trying to do. How does that match with what you see funding? And there's some good linkages that we would have never known about. And also ask yourself, is the funding agency interested in the same population and area that you're talking about? Well, Sylvia's made it clear she'd like more quality proposals and fund more things in the Pacific Islands. That's the whole reason we're here, so it's important to ask that question. Just like this funding for the MacArthur Foundation, the first question I asked, because we're focusing on a project in Haiti, do you want to fund the project in Haiti? Because if they didn't, that would be the wrong project to go. On their website, they didn't give any geographic boundaries, but it's always a good question to ask the agency, what population areas are you interested in? And has the agency funded similar projects? Some are very open on what they funded, some are very secretive. If you think from ISIF, all the information on who's been awarded is published. It's on the website, so you can go and see what other type of projects have been funded, what their approaches were. The names of the people are there. You can actually, most of them are very happy if you reached out and asked them what their experience was with the grant, what they thought their success factors were, and have that short conversation just to give you the feeling of, what were the success factors that they saw, then you can try to apply the same to your application. And once again, are any of those awards similar to yours? Once again, is it a new idea, or is this something similar they funded in the past? And that's an important question to ask them, because they may, just like as Sylvia said, well, if she ever saw another telecenter, they wouldn't be too excited, because there's been thousands and thousands of them done now around the world, maybe hundreds of thousands. It's not a new idea. Everybody's done it. That's not something we're interested in. So you need to make sure, if they've done a lot of awards in that area, maybe it's not the right direction to go. Or if they've only done 1 or 2, maybe that's an area they want to fund more. Once again, ask the question of the funding manager or agent and see where you stand. And do they require any matching funds? In this case, no. If you did have some matching funds, it does strengthen your application. Some do require that you have matching funds from another agency, another funding source from your own internal organization. Once again, look at the guidelines and make sure if they require matching funds, that's not something that you miss. Any questions on these topics? Once again, it's important, that we're trying to match what we're trying to do and understand the funding agency to make sure it's a good match. And these are important questions to ask when you have that conversation, so that you see where you fit, see where your idea fits within their funding, and if it's a good match and whether you should move forward. Or if there's something you should change, because it's exactly what someone else has done, and maybe that's not the right approach, and maybe rethinking it or going a different direction. And the last one, of course, is when will the award be made? For me, personally, that's one of the most frustrating points that I have. Because I'm working on so many projects and the planning of the resources and the locations in the world and putting a team together and knowing when the funding will be available. And my frustration as someone receiving grants is getting awarded a grant or applying for a grant, and they're supposed to tell us, well, the end June 30th, we're going to make our announcement, and we don't get an announcement until October 1st. And there's people waiting for months. Well, are we going to get this grant? Are we going to work on this project? What's going to happen? The people on the ground are wondering, where are you? Did we get the money? Are you going to start? For me, that's the most frustrating part of this whole process is applying and not knowing you got the grant until 3, 4, 5, 6 months after it was originally said it was supposed to be awarded.
Delays on allocation of funding, you mean, for the announcements of grant recipients? Well, we have 6 members of the selection committee that are spread around the world and traveling a lot. And although we have deadlines of by when they should be able to finalize their assessments and have a conference call to confirm that they're okay with these people to be selected and sometimes there are delays on that part of the process, that they have an unexpected flight or life happens to them also, and something happens and they can't complete their assessments on time. That might be one option or one aspect. The other aspect is that once they have finalized the selection, for example, for this year they selected 11 proposals. Once they have finalized that, I contact them to make sure they accept the terms of the grant. And we send some information about what the terms of the grant are. Some cases we send already the contract so they can check it out. And sometimes it takes a while for them to get back to us and say, yes, we are in the position to accept the grant. Because what we have found is that from the time they submit the proposal until the time that the process has been finalized, things have changed in their organizations also. Sometimes people have left, people that was supposed to do the project is not there anymore, or something else happened, and they are not in the position to conduct the grant anymore. So what we have to do is to go to the next one on the list that has the highest score and contact them and see if they are interested to take the grant instead. So that process can take a week if people react really quickly and send you everything. So we can make the announcement knowing that those people are in actually the position to accept the grant. Or it could take a month if they actually get back to you and, oh, we don't know, we're going to find out. So it's not only, the ball is not only on our side, it's not that straightforward. We don't want to publish announcements of formal grant recipients or award winners when we don't have confirmation that they are ready to accept the terms of the grant or the award.
I've lived that quite a few times, and it is. And in fact, it's interesting because I do partner with academics. In some of the projects I do, as I mentioned, Professor Hosman, I've also teamed up with academics out of the University of Colorado, out of the university in Italy, one out of the Netherlands, and we had one particular grant where it was supposed to be awarded June 1, and we found out about it November 1st. And in the proposal, we were supposed to give the final report of our findings the last week of November, and they wanted to keep us to that date, which was unrealistic because it was a research project, and academics teach during the year, they have the summers off, they were going to do all the research during the summer. And so we said, no, well, it's not this November, a year from now we'll get the report done. And they weren't happy because they wanted, not realizing their delay caused, our project to get delayed either. So, but they still, at that point, after we explained it and we understood, they still went ahead with the funding, and we did it the next summer. But it is frustrating when you have, especially in my case, working with these academics, they planned their summer around doing this research, and it didn't happen. And so they were disappointed too. So that's critical. When will be the award made? Some of them, we've learned to stick to their. If you don't have it submitted on this date, no excuses, no flexibility, and we're going to announce on the date. They hold to it. Other agencies are a little more lax on when they make their announcement. If they get more submissions than they thought, it may take them longer to make their decision. Whereas Sylvia talked about it, if they contact one or two people and the staff has changed their things and they can't accept the award, then they have to do their due diligence to look at the next one. So it just takes longer to make those announcements. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're writing your grant. Put your timeline in place, understanding that not to make it so tight that if there's things, if it slips a month or two in the award cycle, that it doesn't jeopardize the project for you from your standpoint. And we talked, I know I'm drilling this topic in, you have to play by the rules, meaning, get the guidelines, understand those guidelines, because the first thing is, as they're reviewing the grant, is they're looking at those guidelines and they're saying, okay, do they meet them all? Regardless whether it's a good idea, regardless whether it's an exciting project, if it doesn't meet those guidelines, we're going to put that one aside and look at ones that do. And so they may not even read your idea because you've missed something in the guidelines. So I can't say it's strong enough. Understand the guidelines, reread them, and then follow them exactly how it's written, or you'll be thrown out on a technicality. So with that, follow those guidelines exactly. Respond to all the sections in the submission. Well, you don't want to miss a section and be thrown out on that technicality. And adhere to the format restrictions. The nice thing I'll say on the ISIF grant is it's online. You don't have to create a whole separate document and worry about PDFing it and emailing it. It's all online, and it makes it, from a flow standpoint, easy to do once you've actually written your grant and fitting into their format. And the topics that must be covered in order presented in the guidelines. And once again, with ISIF, because of the online nature, everything's already laid out for you, so you don't need to worry about complex formatting or where to put stuff into the proposal. It's already laid out for you. The other thing that I like is that she had, on the website, there's a paper copy that you can download and fill in offline yourself before you do the actual submission, so you can see what all the sections are, you can see what the requirements are, and then when you get ready to submit, then you can just copy and paste online and make your submission. And use the headings that correspond. Well, in this case, they're already on the online system, so it makes it very, very easy. And I can't stress enough that we talked the last day and a half that, talk to the program manager. They want to see successful applicants. They want to see successful projects happen. They want to make sure you're submitting the best quality application you can. And it just increases your ability for success so much more than submitting blindly and not fully understanding what they want, what they're looking for. Because then it is submitting blindly, and there's things you may not have known about because you didn't talk to the granting agency. And so, to save, I'll say it's the work I've done to save me a lot of times where I thought what we're working on would be a good fit, but then when talking to the program officer, it really wasn't, and so it wasn't worth wasting everyone's time and my time, my staff's time to make a submission.
Well, I would prefer that an email might call me. But yes, I think it's better to get the questions in writing so I can actually take a look at them and provide them with the most accurate information. Sometimes on a phone call that's not easy, or I don't hear them properly, and then it takes longer to respond. So I would prefer to receive email before my questions, although WhatsApp I can also, but I will let them know. Please email me anyway. So. In terms of how many, what I can say is, for example, for the awards that just finished a few weeks ago, we received 24 award nominations, and 19 of them contacted me. And if I go and see what the selection committee thought about those applications or nominations, I'm sure those 19 are the ones that passed the first selection, because they actually were the ones asking questions and clarifying things before submitting the nomination. With the grants applications, we get a lot of people having problems uploading things at the last minute. So the last week it's always crazy, just trying to make sure that, I pressed the submit button, but I forgot to add the image or the file. Can you please add it on my behalf? And I have to spend quite a lot of time doing that. People asking questions. For example, the launch of the call for proposals was the 10th of June, 14 days ago. And I have received around 10, probably 8 to 10 questions about the grants process. And they are working on the proposals and already send me information. So I guess from those 8, probably 5 will submit. We'll see how it goes. But it's normally it's not a big percentage of people that actually contact me before they try to submit the application and they experience problem with the bandwidth, or something happens and they're just not sure if they received the application was received completely or things like that. But,
And one big area is our conflict of interest. If there's a conflict of interest, you need to they can disqualify you from the grant submission, or we don't meet one of the regulations. This came up for me recently. We were applying for a grant from a small wireless company, and when the conflict of interest was, what we didn't realize is one of our volunteers that we have worked on some projects was actually an employee of that company. And that would have disqualified us because they viewed that as a conflict of interest. Not that he was actually going to work on the project, just that he was a volunteer in our company, made that as they viewed it as a conflict of interest. Things to take into mind are the human subjects, and the people, what I mean by that are, if you were going going to do a research study and people are involved, there's guidelines on disclosing their identities, on how you interview them, and so some of those are technical issues on how you're going to handle that kind of information and keep it secure, and whether it's a blind study, just like when we did these surveys of schools and the teachers in Ethiopia. We actually had to assign a number to the teacher and have a duplicate file that tied the number to the name that was kept secret because the teachers they were giving honest opinions and were worried about losing their jobs, and the ones working in their ICT centers. And so what we wanted was a baseline survey, not pinpointing, well, this teacher at the school said that. But, okay, here's a group of 30 schools, here's what they said, and that we can assimilate information as general, but not tie it to one specific person. So we have to think about these kind of things in our proposal to secure the privacy of children or other individuals that may be involved in the work we want to do. Then, of course, once again, make sure we meet the due date, that it's received, or if it's something that needs to be postmarked by a certain date, that happens. And we don't exceed the page limit or the word count that's allowed for submissions. Because once again, Sylvia doesn't want to receive 500 pages of information for a $30,000 grant. It's just not realistic. I don't know if you want to comment.
Attachments that people try to force us to read. These are very long CVs, the curriculum guides, their summaries. Please don't. We have in the application form a very small part of the form devoted to get to know the name of the project team members, what their experience is in 200 words, and that's it. That's all we can assess. One thing we are interested to know is how many women are participating in the teams and the role of every team member. We understand that by the time the proposal is announced, that team member group might change. So by the time the proposal, the contract is signed, a new set of contact details is requested. And we try to keep one single point of contact with grantees to avoid confusion. Right? So it's very hard to know all the people in your organizations to make sure that I'm talking finance with your finance director and then I'm talking technical with your technical people. No, I'm talking with you. And you have to deal with whatever people in your organization that are supporting you on the finance, technical, administration, and whatever. So in terms of the CVs, please stick to the small profiles that we are asking. If we need to know more about team members, we will ask at a later date. But please don't attach all the articles that you have published and all that sort of thing, because it's just not useful.
We're doing a project here in Vanuatu, and we want to show that the telecom regulator is supporting this project, if not just in spirit, but any other way. Sometimes getting those letters and getting the proper person to sign them and getting them to show support for the project takes longer than what you think. And so, from a technical standpoint of constructing your application, while those letters are important, they do take time.
Just one comment on the letters is that it's important that you send us the letters signed. We are all good with the scanned documents. You don't have to post them to us. It's all good if you just take a photo or a photocopy or something of the signed letter. If I receive a Word document that says that you're great, you're awesome, you're doing a great job, and it doesn't have a signature, it doesn't say anything.
A technical issue to make sure not only do you get your letters, but make sure they're signed. And I know I'm guilty of it, of waiting sometimes to the last minute, and I forgot to contact the university or Illinois Institute of Technology, and they have their own process to get a letter like that signed, and it takes 5 business days, but I got 3 more days to submit the proposal. So I'll say I violated the non-signed one before because I didn't get it back in time, but I did get it eventually. So don't do what I do. It's better to get them signed and make sure you have the time to do that. And also, if you want to make any charts or graphics, if that can explain it better than a paragraph, a lot of times a picture is worth 1,000 words. If that helps you get your idea across, make sure you take time to do that also, and to support that. The other key factor is the appropriate writing style, and being able not only to articulate your words, but write it to the funding source in the language that they would like to hear. And using the terms and technologies that is going to make them comfortable in understanding what you want to write it. And so it's really writing to the area of the field, not the jargon. And I know us that are in ICT, we tend to use a lot of jargon. That we're going to use, OS to do this, and like, well, what do you mean by OS? Operating system, open source? What are you talking about? I don't understand. And I know in the technology field we're riddled with jargon, and it's interesting. Even it changes in different parts of the world what jargon that's actually used in the technology area. So once again, understand who it's going to and what jargon they're used to. Like this MacArthur Foundation grant that I recently applied for, they're not ICT people. We couldn't put any ICT jargon in there because they wouldn't have understood. They're looking for more, what you're going to do with the results of it, not that we've got to put a server and build out a wide area network and link all these healthcare clinics together. They're more, the doctors are going to have the information they need on these tablets, and here's the information they're going to get and how it's going to help the patient. They could care less about servers and wide area networks and all the jargon that goes along with that. So, I can only stress that, find that external person, if they can read it and understand it, and it's clear what your idea is, how it's going to help someone, and how you're going to do it, then you're going to have a successful submission. If they read it and there's too much jargon and it's not clear on that path, a little more work is going to be needed into it. And never write it in the first person. I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. You need to write it as, here's what we're trying to accomplish. Here's the goals we've set out to achieve, not that I'm doing this, I'm doing that, organizations do that. So don't write it in the first person. And clarify. I think that's the hardest part of these is making it clear, concise, and that there's clarity to the submission. And once again, having that third person reviewer that can take it, read it, and understand it, or point to you and say, I don't quite understand this, what did you mean? And you can explain it to them verbally, and how you can capture that verbal conversation in your document. It's going to go along with this. And, everything's about the 5 W's, the who, where, what, when, and being able to, and why you're doing this. If you can get your 5 W's in there, and that really will tell the granting organization that you've thought through how you're going to do it, where you're going to do it, when you're going to do it, why you're doing it. They'll get a good submission. And write to inform. You're really trying to inform them of your idea, how you want to execute it, who you're going to help, but don't use language that's biased. Use language that's really trying to inform them, not bias them to your idea. You're trying to educate them on why your idea is good, who you're going to help. And of course, trying to persuade, trying to sell them on the idea. Sell them that you understand how you're going to succeed, the path you're going to take. So I've got some tips on how to do that, but you're writing to sell your idea, keep that in mind. And you want to back it up either with data, experience, as we talked about previously, or reputation that you have in your field. Any of those to really help you write that persuasive argument. And if you can find current data, that helps also. That you're not looking at an idea that's 20 years old. It's present, it's now, the need is in the time frame that you're talking about. And with that persuasion, you use it to establish your credibility. Once again, use your experience, use your thought leadership on things you've done in the past, and that really helps build that story. And don't use unsubstantiated opinions. Once again, we're writing to inform and persuade, we don't want to make claims that we can't substantiate, such as, no Pacific rural islands have internet connectivity and I'm going to solve that. Well, we all know there's lots of islands that projects have been done, there's internet connectivity, so if we make a claim, we need to be able to substantiate it, or the funder will see through that and get rejected for that. So we looked at this yesterday. So for the ISIF grant, of course, these are the main categories that have been outlined that need to be filled out. And if as we talked through this yesterday and we talked through it today, once again, thinking of that idea, looking at that problem statement, how's that idea going to help a group of people, a society, an island? Really then helps you look at, well, what's my motivation for doing this? What's my innovation with that idea? What's my project objectives? You can start seeing how these topics become easier to expand and build upon as we fill out the grant application. There's some specific things in project objectives and project methodology that are critical. And I'll walk through some specific examples from things that I use to help author those and create those. Because once you understand those areas, it helps with some of these other ones, especially on the output and how the project's going to be sustained long term. If we understand, what the big objectives are and what the methodology is. And I mentioned earlier, the grant, when we start with this idea in our mind, we formulate it, we build around it. The grant isn't the idea, it's really a plan on how you're going to execute on that idea. And so, as I said before, a lot of people have good ideas. It's those that know how to implement those ideas and get something done that are going to be successful. So the key really with writing this grant is taking that idea and putting a plan around it of how you're going to execute that under the guidelines of the funding to be successful. So there's some key parts of the grant. We've talked about those. We saw the key parts that are in the ISIF grant. And what I'd like to do is pick a few of those pieces out and talk about the puzzle and in places, especially in the objectives and in the methodology, on some of the things that I've learned that can help you write a more successful grant. A simple one is title. Just what is this going to be called? And it's important because it captures the reader's eye the first time, the reviewer. And so it is important and it should convey what the project is about. And it's good to have other people look at it so that the reviewing group can actually tell what you're asking for. And there's a lot of titles out there that I asked someone to give me a couple titles of things they've seen that they saw and they had no clue what this was about. And so these were the two that my friend gave me that runs a small grant organization out of San Francisco that he's gotten. Developing a computer model for interdisciplinary humanity curriculum in the context of rural development. He looked at it and says, I don't even know what that is. The title really didn't convey what they wanted to do, which was they wanted to study, they wanted to develop a computer model how people in a rural community were learning. Well, that really doesn't say that. The first one, I can't even pronounce the first word, let alone what it is. Human rights is a human responsibility, imaged in humanities, helped by ICT. I'm not sure what that means. We're going to take images to show people's rights with a computer. I don't know what that title means either. So, when you look at what you're trying to do, sometimes if you're too close to it, it doesn't have any meaning. So it's very, once again, give it to someone to review it to see if they can understand that title and what we want to do. And if a layman can understand it, then you've got a title that's going to go through the process. If it, something like these two, the average person would have no idea what this project's about, what they're trying to do. I would read that and have no clue what they're trying to do. The other thing that's helpful is also an abstract of what your grant is and whether it's needed. Some grant applications require it, some don't. But it's always good to have that where someone says, well, what are you trying to do? And you have a very nice abstract that you can send them that's concise and tells them. And so it's something that should be standalone. And it's something that all the reviewers should read. And while not all grants ask for this, it's something that I make a habit of doing only because, especially if I get an award, people, like, oh, you won that, what's that about? Well, you're not going to send them your whole grant application because it may be well, in a recent case, when we got the ISIF award, the Department of Education and Chuck said, well, what's that about? What part of the project is that? And so we had a nice little abstract that we could send them. Here's what we're going to do with that grant as far as the rural schools. And so it makes it easy to explain to someone from a PR standpoint, from just a pure education and a community standpoint, what it's about, as well as other people that are associated with the project. Making sure it's something that's quality that can be publishable. We usually take these abstracts once we've won and put them on our website. Show what the awards that we've had. In the case of the project in Chuck, we have a project website that we would put that on. And once again, keep it to 1 page or less, as clear and concise. And you'll be surprised how often you actually end up using this, as well as someone like Sylvia when they make the grant award and they want to publicize it. If you've come up with this abstract of what is about, what you're trying to do, when you're going to do it, and who's it helping, in concise and less than a page, it really would be surprised how many places it gets used. And once again, avoid writing it in that first person that I'm doing this with this grant, I'm doing that with the grant. And you don't don't refer to the proposal in the grant. This document needs to be standalone, what the project is about, not referring to, well, I'll go to page 12 in the grant and see what, for more details. Look at it as something that's standalone and can be published. If you do it up front while you're writing the grant, it actually saves you a lot of time than trying to do it after the fact. And make sure it covers all key elements in the order of how the project's going to progress. So that's just one of my little tips of something I always do when I apply for a grant, because we use it both internally at Inveneo so that the rest of the staff knows what the grant's about that we applied for. When we're successful, then we can put it on the website, we can use it for PR reasons. Our partners can use it, they have something short and concise that they can use for their websites or their publications. So, we started out yesterday talking about the idea, and then how do we spin that into a needs or problem statement. And so, what I'd like to do in this next section is really talk about how do we develop that needs or problem statement that we're going to have with our idea and take it to the next level. In that needs assessment, it's really about the task you face to do this, and it's important, and this is the part in most grants that is the most difficult part to write, and it's most of the time it's not written very well, and it's really what you're trying to do here is convince the funding source that you understand the problem, you understand how to help. You've got this idea, now here's your problem statement of how you're going to help. And it's one of the hardest parts to write of the whole grant, in my opinion, because it's critically important and it's a tough part to articulate. But once you do that well, the rest of the grant actually flows quite easily. So, and part of that in citing the problem is, to prove that there's a need there, and cite evidence of that need that you're trying to address. And if you can illustrate that with any graphics or charts that prove that, once again, a picture is worth 1,000 words, and sometimes a lot more. And so it's really helpful for that convincing story. And then demonstrate the need is pressing. Again, that gets back to your citing data, your experience, and is it demonstrate why it's pressing. I mean, just as putting tablets in the hands of children in schools in remote islands, is that a pressing need? Well, if they don't have books, if they have no economic future, etc., if there's a whole generation growing up that's missing out, you can make a case as that as a pressing need. And it's really about the problem that's important to be solved. If you can articulate why the problem is important and how that problem is solved, achieve that. Oops. And how will the project address that problem and the gaps that will fill. And so that problem statement and being articulated, for me, myself personally, this is one of the hardest parts, but once you break past it and can articulate it, for me, the rest of the proposal comes very easily, because you've got that idea and who you're going to help and how you're going to help. But once you've got that down, the rest flows very easily. So with that, here's some of the techniques that I use. It's really, I look at how do you frame that that need? How do you look at that problem and frame it? And, you know, don't always assume that no one else has thought of this. And as Sylvia said, do a little Google searching, see who else has done this, see if someone else has approached it, how they've approached it, see how your idea may be a little more innovative or different. Or someone else has done it and you could see the roadblocks, the pitfalls they went through, the scars that they have by doing it, and maybe you could come up with a better way of doing it. And so, you know, first take a good look. Google is our friend in this area to see what else has been out there. Google will establish it. Next, then look at the problem statement as the framework for the project. So what we're trying to establish is, the goals, objectives, and the methods of evaluation. Once we take that idea and we can frame what the problem is, who we're helping, and how we're going to do it, the rest of these things flow quite easily from that. And provide a thorough explanation of the need. Why this need is out there, why we're tackling that need, why this idea is going to work with that need. And then, test those assumptions. Once again, having someone that's a third party that's not associated with it, that you can say, here's the idea, here's the problem that I see, here's how I'm going to address it, and having test that with someone to see if they can understand it as a third party. And then this allows you to anticipate the questions, especially once you submit the application, the questions reviewers may have. If you've I'll say, field tested your statement, you can anticipate those answers, or maybe even incorporate those questions or those answers into your statement to anticipate them, so that the review goes smoothly. And once again, make sure you're incorporating the proposal guidelines. If you're not doing that, you're missing out, and you may be thrown out on a technicality. The problem statement for me in writing grants, really, once I get a good grasp on that, and understanding the framework of what should be in there, and can articulate it to someone else, and they can understand it, then I know I'm going to have a successful application, because it's clear, it's concise, and hopefully, as someone's reading it, the questions are in their mind. As they read further, those questions are answered, and it meets the guidelines of the grantor. So this is critical to do that. And then you can and then take that framing statement and then look at, okay, what's the supporting documentation? What's the supporting experience, or the approach that I've taken? What supports that I understand that there's evidence that this is going to work? Whether it's my experience, whether it's citing statistics, etc. So, what should a good problem statement include? We need to show, one, that you understand the problem. I have this idea, it's going to solve that problem, and do I really understand what that problem is? Can you demonstrate that why it's an important problem to solve? Oops, I had a typo there, sorry. Well, that's strange. I was supposed to say Vanuatu, why I got the wordsmith to words a while, I'm not sure. So excuse my typo, I'm feeling embarrassed. That was supposed to say demonstrate and solve the problem not only in Vanuatu, but something that may be regionally or nationally important. It may be a group on a specific island or a specific island itself, but does it also have regional or national implications? Meaning, while it may be a local problem, it may apply to other places that may be appealing to a grantor. Does it clearly describe the aspects of the problem that your project will address, and does it fill, and what gaps does it fill for that? And does it, does it do a good job describing either theoretical or conceptual basis for your project, and that you have knowledge around that particular area? So once again, it's not, we don't have statistics or data to back it up, so we actually have personal experience. Part of the team have personal experience or knowledge around that, and that's what we're basing our project on. So if you can, either from a theory or a conceptual standpoint, articulate that, that'll work really well. And I guess I've already said that if you have any statistical data, use it where appropriate. And demonstrate that, the creativity or innovative part of your approach. Your innovative idea, what's the innovation or creativity that you put in to address that solution. And as your reviewers reading this, if they understand from the beginning what the idea is, what your problem statement is, what you're trying to do, and why you have the capability to address that problem, it's going to make your chances of success much higher, because they're going to see the evidence in the rest of your document of how you pulled that together. If you don't do a good job here, the rest of your proposal just isn't going to be clear, because they didn't get up front what you're trying to do and how all the pieces fit together. Any questions on this? For me, this is the hardest part. Getting that clear, concise problem statement, getting it articulated on how you're going to solve that problem, why your knowledge or statistics support it, and where's the creativity or innovation in that. And I think, Sylvia, these are all things you want to see, and if you can articulate those, your success rate is going to be much better. Any comments or from anyone? So last thing is describe how the project fits in to the existing goals, maybe of your organization already. And is there a leverage point there? And maybe your organization has similar goals that can be, this fits in very nicely. So, as you read, once you've created that problem statement, then, the questions to ask and what you're trying to get out, what is the significant need you're trying to meet? If you can read that and answer that question, because that's what the reviewer is going to have in their mind. What is the need here? And is this application actually addressing that need properly? What's the current status of the need? This is the case of, pays to Google up-to-date information or statistics if you have them, rather than citing a report that's 20 years old. Is the need current? And will this project help that need? Is there a solid evidence showing that if I do this, it will actually address that need? I've used the example many times, computer lab or tablets in a rural school. Will the approach I'm taking actually improve the educational quality in that school? Will it provide the benefit that we want, and have we, demonstrated that we understand that need and how we're going to address it? And what really needs to be done to make that happen? Do we understand the steps? Do we understand what we need to make those things happen? It's easy to put in, install from a technical standpoint a computer lab, but how do we actually then make,
put in a curriculum that the students are going to use to learn from that. Then we're going to train the teachers. And we really understand what needs to be done for this to be successful. And, asking the questions, there's not one person can do everything. And do we understand what needs to be delivered, what services need to be done, and who's going to do that? And especially if we're teaming with another agency, government organization, another NGO, who's doing what, and when are they going to do them, and by who. So if our problem statement, if we can ask these questions and see that in our problem statement, we know we've done a good job. But the difficult part is how do we keep it short, succinct, clear, and concise without writing a book. And that's our real challenge here. How to get that idea across in a minute of what is our idea, what's the problem we're trying to solve, how we're going to solve it, and how and what impact it's going to have. If we can articulate that in our problem statement, then the rest of the grant is going to be quite fairly easy to write. And last, is it still possible to make an impact on the problem? Meaning, it's a big problem, and will this actually make an impact, or is it so time sensitive that if this doesn't happen soon, we're going to miss the opportunity? So we're looking at who, what, where, when, and how. Does our problem statement actually answer those 5 W's? Is there a gap that exists in the knowledge base? Meaning, is there obvious gaps in there that we haven't addressed? If the reviewer sees those, then the red flag goes up. And is there literature or websites that talk about the significance of the problem? And have we found those? And once again, good Google searches will help answer this question. Is there evidence that this project will lead to other significant studies? It's also helpful that we have forethought to see, while we have specific outcomes we want for this project, there may be other significant things that come out of it that are going to benefit other organizations or people that we can make available, and just to highlight those. And once again, we talked about this. Has there been previous work done? Was it effective? If we could cite examples of people that have done a similar approach and that we've understood, or we're taking a different slant on it to cite those. And what's the impact of this study or this project? If we can ask that question and get a clear answer out of our problem statement, to know what the outcome is that we're trying to achieve. These are all the type of questions that the reviewers of our grants will be asking in their mind as they go through and read your grant. If they can answer all these after reading it, we know we've done quite well. Another thing, and I think that's, as we're writing this, we tend to make a lot of assumptions. And what we want to do is check those assumptions and put those aside, because if we can't document something, if we can't cite experience or knowledge based on something, then assumptions are somewhat of our enemy. And so assumptions, what we don't want is a lot of assumptions in our document that we can't substantiate. A lot of assumptions that leave gaps as far as the reader reading it, like, I don't understand why you say this is so. And so we want to avoid as many assumptions as we can, because it just distracts from the quality of our proposal. Question? What I can add to that is it's the same thing. It's like if I started working with a project
with Luis on rural schools and connectivity, and we put a statement in, the minister or Department of Education has an IT support staff, they're going to do long-term support. Well, I'm making a big assumption.
Yes.
And unless I've actually got a letter from the minister or the department head saying they're going to do that, that's a big assumption that, well, how do you know that they have staff that does that? So the problem statement is very important. And so what we can really do is start dissecting that and breaking it into pieces to make it easier to write. The first sentence is really, here's our idea now, what is the problem that this is going to solve? And so typically the first sentence is, what is that problem that we see? And then after that, clarifying that problem by defining both the behavior or what's normal, or in other words, why does that problem exist out there, and how do we see this is going to solve it? And it really states that pressing need, which the goal is it's addressing what the funder also wants to see as a problem solved, and in an area that they want to solve. Break the problem statement down into making sure that we be able to state what that problem is, define why it exists and how we're going to solve it, and why it's a pressing need. Just as we all, it's amazing when I come to the Pacific Islands, I'm going to go off on a tangent here, just you in water levels and the impact of climate change you see every day now. And us sitting in California, there's still people saying, oh, climate change, that's just the government making rhetoric, it doesn't really exist. And it's just, I'm like, are you crazy? But they're not seeing it every day. So here it is a pressing matter. The amount of overfishing, the climate change is affecting water levels. It is a pressing issue here. But if I need to articulate that problem. So as I talk in my world with someone in California that doesn't see it, that they can understand why it's a pressing issue. And if I can articulate that well, then they'll see the problem and they'll buy into that. And so that's critical, as I said, to get that person that's not associated with what you're working on, who can actually, you can go through and here's what you see as a problem, here's how I clarified it, here's why it's pressing. If they can understand that, then you've got a good foundation that you can start with. And so part of that is, once we've done that, is then, documenting that problem statement. Once that it's rooted in factual information, not in those assumptions. The problem is, as we've defined it, do we have facts to back that up? And so, it must be documented in a way to make it so your statement is correct. We see the problem is literacy of children in rural island schools. Is there a study, is there documentation that shows there is something going on that's affecting the quality of the education there? And can we document or cite something that shows that? Or can we quote someone that is an expert in that area? And can we show what's going on and what are the basic issues? In the case of literacy, maybe there's no books, and there haven't been, and so basic, rather than putting books in children's hands, let's put the latest information, and we can do that via the internet. So addressing what's going on, why there's a problem, and what are the basic issues. And looking at, is there information available, both either nationally or locally, to do that? And sometimes we have to, do research in this. I was recently asked to help put a proposal together for justifying putting the internet in a rural community to increase employment and their local farming trade. Well, I'm not a farmer. I don't know how the internet's going to help those farmers. We all think, well, they can look at crop prices. Well, I'm sure there's more to it than that. And, and is there information we can cite? Well, there have been other projects where they've showed, farmers have learned about the latest irrigation, about weather, about what crops, and increased their yields dramatically. Well, wow, I didn't know that's what farmers did with the internet. Well, now we can start, I can cite some national or statistics in other places, local information that, crop production has dropped, and here's how we think by bringing the internet there, it's going to solve that basic issue of, crop production dropping. And show that, maybe the local problem is a national one. And, a lot of these grantors, they want to do pilot projects or small projects, but are applicable to a lot of different areas. If we're solving a problem for one community or one island, well, guess what? There may be other places that have that same problem, and this will show them a way that they can do it. Just like the project I'm doing now in Chuuk. We're not planning to put a computer lab in every school, but we're planning to put them in 5 and show the impact of that to the Department of Education, so that the Department of Education can see the impact it's had, and they can carry on the project and see an implementation and see an affordable way of doing it that they didn't see before. So in our case, yes, there's an education problem. It's a local in those islands, it's also a national one that can be applied to more places. So once again, documenting those claims and your assumptions, and really changing those assumptions to something that's factual based, and citing current literature, citing things that have been found on the internet. But of course, remember, we all know everything on the internet is true, so it's always good to find more than one source on the internet, because we have to know where that comes from. And so if we can find multiple references, that's even better. And 1 or 2 should work for your purposes for citing the need, the problem, both locally and nationally. And also, key informants or people out there in the industry that are experts that have given their opinion, or case studies that have been done. As well as statistics. In a lot of the work in ICT, we use a lot of case studies to show what someone else has done and cite those, why we may have similar results. And also surveys on, finding out what the problem is and why, and citing that survey on why we think this is going to fit into and match the problem from those surveys. And also focus groups. If we're not sure what this looks like, actually having a focus group of experts give their opinion. And those experts may just be the local people and what they are expecting. I mean, just as we're looking at all the things a community center, we put in a community center in some of the remote islands in the Chuuk Lagoon, as we actually went out and talked to people, Skype was the one thing they wanted to do. They weren't worried about finding about agriculture or health information. They wanted to Skype because they've got a relative living somewhere else that they haven't talked to in a long time, and it'd be nice to see them. But we didn't know that until we did these focus groups. And of course, we have relevant charts or graphs. So we want to document our problem statement, and these are good ways of doing that.